Welcome to Learn English with Liv. Today's episode is a listening episode about living abroad in a different country. So this will be for my intermediate to advanced learners. However, if you're a beginner, feel free to start listening and see if you can catch any new words or phrases that you may not have known. And if you're not already, please hit the subscribe button. And if you need subtitles, please turn them on. So today I'm going to talk about my experience living abroad when I was in university. So as a university student, I lived abroad in two different countries. I lived in South Korea and in Japan. I would say it was definitely a very eye-opening experience. It was not something that I ever thought I would be able to do, but luckily, due to my circumstances and scholarships, I was able to go abroad. At that time, I was 22 years old, and it was my first time ever living without my parents. I decided to go to South Korea and to Japan because they were countries that interested me in my studies. When I lived abroad, I never could have anticipated the amount of friends and fun that I had. Definitely, though, there were a lot of challenges, which I'm going to talk about in this video. But let's start with the positives. The first thing that I experienced was making a lot of new friends. Now, the friends that I made were from all over the world. I had one friend from Iran, I had one friend from South Korea, and I had a couple of Canadian friends, and one from France. So when you live and study abroad, it is very easy to make friends from different countries. But in fact, it was very difficult to make friends who were actually South Korean and Japanese. I'm not sure why this is. I think it has to do with, first of all, the language barrier. I didn't speak any Korean or Japanese at the time, and the friends that I did make already spoke a little bit of English. Now, maybe you are experiencing this as well. You're trying to make Canadian or American or English-speaking friends, but it's difficult to make them. And I have to say that sometimes you have to go out of your comfort zone to do that. The second really amazing part about living abroad was I got to travel, not just in South Korea and in Japan, but all over the world. I was able to travel to Southeast Asia, and I was able to travel to Europe in the following months. This really expanded my worldview. I was able to understand why certain people thought the way that they did and experience different languages and cultures and food. I have to say, I think my favorite cuisine so far is Japanese food. But in Southeast Asia, I would say Malaysian food was very good. Now, let's talk about some of the challenges about living in a new foreign country. I would say the number one most difficult thing for me was loneliness. Despite having met a lot of new friends, I miss my family so much. And it's really hard when you live in a country that you don't speak the language. So when problems arise or you get sick, it's very hard to not have your family or people from back home to support you. I went through a little bit of a difficult situation where I had to go to the hospital. And I remember that it was so incredibly difficult to do by myself. And you do learn a lot about yourself and how to be more resilient. However, it was not an easy thing to go through. Another thing is financials. So as I mentioned before, I was able to study abroad based on a scholarship. I also had student loans and savings, but after traveling and having fun, all of a sudden the bank account starts to dwindle. And it was a very harsh reality to face coming home with almost no money. Now, maybe you're smarter than me, you saved a lot, or if you're going to study abroad, you're thinking about financials. But it is easy to get caught up in spending all of your money on certain things. But I also would say don't be too stingy with your money. I think being too cautious about spending money can also be a downfall. So, finding that middle ground is really important when living in a foreign country. So, I would say there's positives and negatives to living in a foreign country. But ultimately, I would suggest anyone to go abroad and do it. If you enjoyed this listening, please leave a comment down below if you're currently living in a foreign country that speaks English, or if you're in a foreign country that doesn't and you're trying to study English. And what are your hopes and dreams for living abroad if you have them? And thank you so much again for listening. If you're not subscribed, please do. And I really hope you enjoyed learning English with me today. So thanks again and see you in the next video. Bye for now.